Welcome in, everyone. RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here, John here. We are a mere 12 days until the start of the MLS regular season, and we are just so much hype about the season. Definitely not players that we were super excited to watch this year getting sold for cash to other teams in the league, and now we have to watch them. None of that happening, right, John?
No.
We're all just super happy, super positive, all this stuff.
I am. The good thing is we were told we're going to play the kids, and all of the kids are healthy and still on the roster, so it's going to be very exciting. I'm into it.
Yes, we'll see. I want to be excited, man. I don't want to enter a season like this.
You know what's going to happen. We've been here before. They're going to win the opener, and then we're going to be like, all right, we're going to win the cup. All right, good. That's what's going to happen. We just need a little bit of juice there. If you are looking, there are some. I know we're not following our pattern here. There are some people that have been watching these moves. There's like two that are like, this is good. And I am excited about this. And I'm glad they are, because someone has to be. Because if we do well, they can go back and be like, I told you. But for everybody else who's been watching this, there's no way to look at this and be like, I am actually excited for week one. And I am more excited than I was last year at this time for this very season. Like, I don't think so. I do not think so. But that's okay. It's a long season. Things will happen. Things will change.
Before we get into that, John, how was your weekend, my friend?
I was looking at schools for my soon-to-be kindergartner, which is both exciting and nerve-wracking. Anybody who has done this, please send me your thoughts on what makes a good kindergarten, and also tell me, John, you are overthinking this. It's kindergarten, so tell me that. I'll take it. I'll take on all board any of your feedback. I think I looked at our average age of our listeners, and it's in the child rearing region. So there should be some listeners that have thoughts. So send them my way. Ted, what was your weekend like? You were not doing that. You were doing something that wasn't that.
I was not being a proper adult. I was kind of a quiet weekend watching. Soccer teams did not do well. Heidenheim lost. Liverpool lost.
Famously, Liverpool lost,
playing like a Z roster, basically. Even though there were some good players out there. Not a good weekend for soccer, though. Hey, the magic of the cup lives on. I got super excited to see Virginia Dream playing against the Kickers in the Open Cup. I think that came out while we were away last week. And then Bill Hamid, who I thought was going to play for the Virginia Dream,
got a promotion.
Got a promotion and is now going to be playing for Miami FC. So good for him. I'm glad for him. He was, I think, posting on Twitter about how all the people for like the soccer tournament or whatever, that like 7v7 like tournament that takes place in like Cary, North Carolina. And he's like, no, I'm still dreaming about, playing, in USL or
good for him.
And he did it. He's on he'll be playing for Miami FC.
He's on the only soccer team actually in Miami that's professional. So suck on that, Fort Lauderdale.
Not in Fort Lauderdale.
I think I don't even actually know where Miami FC plays. I hope it's in Miami. Don't hope I'm not a liar.
We closed out the show last week talking about defenders and goalkeepers, and then we were prepping this week to talk about midfielders. So we're going to talk about the midfielders. And Ali Mackay, to his credit, Johnny on the spot was like, "Hey, I'll give you something to talk about with the midfielders. I'm going to sell one of them." In case you haven't heard, the story is now official. Reported by Stephen Goff, reported by Tom Bogart. DC United trade, because we can't call them player sales. They're not sales. They're trades, but they're trades for cash. It's basically, here's money. Take
cars for kids.
It's not GAM. It's not TAM. It's not WHAM, whatever you want to call it. It's actual like physical money. DC United have traded Ted Kudipietro for $1.125 million with $275K additional. If you meet certain performance metrics, they also get a percentage of future cash trade or sale. So if they sell them abroad, they get a percentage of that. If Colorado flips him next year for $3 million, DC gets a certain percentage of that. All right, we got a lot of thoughts on this trade. A lot of fan thoughts about this trade. I will say, I think DC United is. I feel like we're one of the. I know other teams like their homegrown kids, like their, like the players that come up through the academy. Are other MLS teams? I'd be curious to know, are other MLS teams like as invested? I feel like we have like even though they're like you look at Ted Pietro, like, yeah, he had a pretty good 2023. He kind of emerged a little bit. Wasn't a great season. 2024 wasn't that great either. But you still have a lot of people like me, like you, like everybody else that speaks very highly of him and really, really likes him. Are we because I think other teams would look at like sort of this production and this trade and be like, what's the big deal? You guys got a good amount of money for this player.
Cool.
Like, you
love that.
This is yeah. Well, you'll get it. You'll get into that. But are we unique in that regard? I feel like we are. I feel like there is something special about DC.
The reason why he's gonna be sad.
Go ahead.
Because there's nothing else to be excited about as a DC United fan. It's not team success. It's not seeing, other than we've had Wayne Rooney, we've had Christian Benteke. We're not watching in person the guy you have seen score 1 million goals on NBC on the mornings on the weekends. This is all we got. So that is why we care so much. And as that's all we have, and as we've been talking about this team for a billion years on this podcast, all we've said is like, if you're not going to spend big on big players, spend money on the academy, bring in youth players, give them minutes, let them develop, let us have this relationship with these young players. And I think you've always said like nothing will get this city more excited than seeing its own grow up and do well and win MLS Cup and win trophies here in DC and then go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, because we're not winning any trophies and haven't for quite some time, we're not sticking around. They're not sticking around to find out. They're saying as soon as we can get a number with 2 commas in it, you're gone. We're gonna cash in. I think that's why. That's my cynical read on why we seem to care so much about homegrowns.
I do think this is so. To clarify for those that I think there was some misinformation from some people. The team gets the $1.125 million. They can convert that into GAM, so they have the option to do that. Tom Bogart was speculating that this sale would come across with some other move. I'm not sure if that's speculation or things he's hearing. I tend to lean that's more speculation. I think this is the roster that we're gonna have. And I think I tweeted out I tweeted out. I keep saying tweeted out. It's posting on Blue Sky. It's not tweeting out.
It's like Kleenex. It'll be a long time before we stop saying that.
I went out and said, like, it's just like, if there is another move, then okay, then I'm excited about this because there is some reasoning behind the sale. This is a sizable offer for a player who's played well in 2023, had a down year in 2024. Certainly, you're not going to get this type of money abroad. Like, you're not going to have a team come in and pay you this type of money for this type of player. Like, this is very unique to MLS. I mean, we'll see what those performance incentives are, but I mean, no one's going to walk in and give you like even probably 1.5 million for Ted Pietro. It's just not happening. So, I think this is the nature of the team that's getting the offer. And I was like, if there is something that's coming across, and there is some move that is, that maybe they didn't think was going to happen. Suddenly it happens and it kind of kicks off this domino effect. My fear is that it's not there. My fear is that if you follow the golf posts and you follow golf is the only one that covers his team on a regular basis. You're talking about the trialists, talking about who was there, and it's Brendan Sarvinia, who we'll talk about, and Rita Zohir, who we talked about last week. Mm-hmm. Brendan Sarvinia was posted by Golf. Said Brendan Sarvinia is the only one who's like looking like he's going to get a contract offer. Suddenly, Rita Zohir is now on this thing. Few days later, Ted Pietro sold off to Colorado. So I posted out. I said, like, if the replacement is Rita Zohir, then I'm extremely disappointed. And that feels like I say. And so like, well, he's not really the replacement. Really, it's Randall Leal. And like, I get it. I get it. But you're talking about a player coming out and who's coming in around that time. It seems pretty clear to me that the team had Rita Zohir around. They got an offer for Ted, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to sell Ted. We'll get something. We think we can get something better in the summer. That's what this feels like. And then we're just going to take Rita Zohir. He's fine. He can do the job. He plays kind of like that sort of advanced type midfielder, sort of off the forward type of player that I think, I won't say he's a similar player to Ted Pietro, but style wise, he feels very similar to Ted Pietro. So that's what this move kind of feels like. And that's disappointing, I think, in a lot of ways. Disappointing.
I would say if we were FC Dallas fans, our brains would break by how many homegrown players we've sold for big transfers before they actually. I was just quickly looking through the homegrown history of all the teams. FC Dallas, just in case you forgot, and there you could scroll for quite a bit of time on Wikipedia. Just the ones that really killed it. FC Dallas Academy players: Kelna Costa, Alejandro Zendejas, Paxton Pomykal, who's I would say had a pretty good career, so I want to say kill it there. Jesus Ferreira, Brian Reynolds playing at Westerlo, Chris Richards playing at Crystal Palace, Ricardo Pepi playing at PSV, Tanner Tessman playing at Lyon. Who else? I mean that there are like some like a level below that, and then you can look at Philadelphia having the player. We did not have had that. We have not, and so so the level for us even still is a challenge. Like I still look for Griffin Yao's box scores. You and I mean you're wearing the jersey right now. We are locked and loaded for Kevin Paredes 2025
to kick off because he's been
just
hurt.
Please start right. And Donovan Pines is still on my tracker. So yeah, I don't know. I think we needed one. I needed one more year of him playing well and healthy. And also I feel like I like when players take a step up and away. Mm-hmm. That also makes it easier. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Colorado Rapids is. It's probably at this point a lateral move. Hopefully, might be flattering us a little bit. I don't know.
It feels. I guess what I always look at is, I want to, I don't mind being a developmental club, but you still want to experience moments with these young players and seeing them, win games for your team, which is, MLS is a selling league. It's a development league. It is what it is right now, but you still want, the goal is to still go out and try to make the playoffs and try to win games. And, I will say we got some of those moments with Ted Pietro. He burst onto the scene in 2023, coming off the bench, assist to Benteke, and then the game-winning goal against Toronto. That will forever remain kind of like a special game in a year that, when I talked about on this show previously, that year I was like, this is a big year for him. He has to step up. Otherwise, I think he's gone. And this has to be it for him. And he made that step. And
then he was gone.
And then now he's gone. But for at least, I guess DC at least got something for it. I think all these moves, and what I will say is this, and question for you, is this a type of move? And I see you getting up out of your chair, so I will wait a few minutes just to see as you tell me your microphone.
I'm back.
Is this the type of move you think that a Dave Casper makes?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't really know. I'm trying to think back to the era of our early DPs or our early homegrowns and what kind of happened with them. Andy Nahar was sold. Mm-hmm. So that would maybe be an analogy.
But there was a nature, I think I look at Bill Hamid, I look at Andy Nahar, that era, they got those players and they held on to them until the money got too big and they hit kind of really hard with some of those players. And
we sold Bill not at the peak of his value. We sold him a little bit past.
Bill left.
You're right. That's a good point. We sold Andy to Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably,
to be honest, yeah.
I would say at a good time. That was a good deal. But other than that, we didn't really make money on players. No, I think you probably wouldn't have sold them.
And the only thing I'll say with Ali Mackay is like this does feel different in the sense of, this is a player that would have been a contributor. This is not, Griffin Yao or Moses Nyman.
Right.
Selling
by the way, welcome back, Moses Nyman to Loud United.
Loud United, yeah. This is not one of those cases. Matej Akambone is sort of similar in that regard, a player who was definitely a few years off, and they took the value when they had it. This feels very much like making a move on a player that probably would have been a contributor this year once he got healthy. I think there's also a nature to this. I feel like this team is looking at the injury history that's piling up, and I think they're also looking at, we can take that risk or the money's here right now. There's no guarantee that the money's going to be there or that there's going to be a deal that comes through if you think about it in those ways. And there's no guarantee, maybe there is something they saw, like, we're not sure how he fits into our system. We're not sure how he fits in, and and
oh man, I don't know about that one.
yeah, I don't know about that either. But
I think he's a good fit.
yeah, I mean, he presses. I agree with you. I don't like this move. I am also willing to say, okay, and it's tough. It's tough to give people. I think a lot of people are just kind of fed up, and I get it. Everybody's fed up. Everybody wants his team to be good, and they're not willing to accept the fact that there is a lot of stuff that has happened and a lot of proverbial dirt that this team is having to basically dig itself out of. And this feels like a part of it. This feels like a part of it. Like there's some other way, there's some other move to strengthen the roster from the contracts that were signed last year and just sort of everything else kind of piling on top of it. I don't know.
The benefit of the doubt is spent for sure and has been spent for a decade. So there's no willing to give. And two, I think there's two things that have to happen. One, we need to replace his production somewhat. And I don't want to hear about Randall Leal. I don't want to hear about that. You were able to dumpster dive him from a perspective of your cost. So whatever he gives you is great. But as far as projecting real value for a player who has not been healthy at all, probably you shouldn't do that. That's really the story with Ted too as well. So you needed it anyway. And now you need it even more from a depth perspective. And you need it for how is this team actually going to be good? Are you going to wait till the summer? Fine. Okay. We'll do that. But then you got to do it. I think otherwise than this move for me, there's only so much watching financial management done well can be exciting. It's like if you were playing Football Manager and you never actually played the games, you were just doing sales and not even purchases, just sales. You're just like, hey, it's sick. Check it out. Look at this pile of money growing. The green line goes up. So I think how this team performs, I think if you look at all of the projections of where DC United is going to be, they're all extremely bottom and negative, right?
Yeah.
For us to do well and sort of beat these expectations, everything has to go right. All the players that were picked up have to hit similar to the way they did last year. So Makai's luck has to be as good as it was last year, and then suffer no injuries in about 3 positions.
I would argue even better than last year. Like it has to be above what it was last year because I mean I don't want to say. I mean, you look at Chris McVay being one of those players that was kind of brought in. Again, he's kind of a flyer, but I mean, I think it has to be even better. And I still would argue that there's not really been an international signing. There's been plenty of domestic signings that have come in. Aaron Herrera, A+ type signing.
Yep.
There hasn't been like a international type signing that has quite hit yet. Maybe it happens this year. Maybe bringing in. We'll all be talking about how great the Matty Patola and Borisy now double pivot is working with this team. I think this year, there is a sizable bet that the team can match its offensive production, which was playoff worthy, like offensive production, and get better defensive. I think that there has been a consistent focus on improving this team defensively. It's why they went out and got Matty Patola. It's why they went out and got Borisy now in the summer. Why they got David Schnegg. Why they went out this year in the big signing really on the defensive side is Kai Rawls, McNaughton, everything else. Like why they kicked out all the keepers and brought in Kim Jung Hung. I think there is a concerted effort to make this team solid defensively. And maybe if your offense suffers a little bit, your defense is so good that you can kind of like, you can win rather than winning games 5-3. You're winning some games 1-0 or 2-0 or 2-1 or something like that. So we'll see. We got some questions regarding this trade. I think a lot of people want to talk about.
Let's do it.
From B Huzzle says, how do we read the QD Pietro trade? DC believes he's injury prone, close to his peak. 15% sell on seems low if they are still high on him, or number 2, they don't see him as a good fit for the system and moved him to get more flexibility.
It's number 1, I think. Has to be.
Yeah.
I think the thing that hurt him, I'm not privy to anything at all. Disclosure. Don't know anything. The fact that his shoulder surgery came so late, did not come earlier in the offseason, did not come during last season. I don't know if it was a new injury. I don't know if it was a re-injury. I don't know anything. To me, I think they were saying, get this thing taken care of. This has been a problem for you all last year. If you weren't fit enough to play, then we should have gotten this done. If it's a rotator cuff, it's 6 months, 5 months, whatever. We don't know. They've been very, very hush hush mum about it. I don't think that if you look at this player and say he would not be able to fit in a dynamic, high press, high energy setup the way this team is set. Unless you're saying the reason why he keeps breaking is because it's too high pressure, and then we've got our Hernan Losada problem all over again. And I don't want to entertain the ideas like we're just running too hard. The players are exploding because the demand is too high. I don't think it's that. I think they're saying this guy's going to get hurt again. He's not going to be available to us for a third of the season once again. He's at a low enough deal.
Let's be clear. March, 4 or 5 games? Not really.
That's assuming everything goes right and he's ready to go right from the jump. And he hasn't had. He said no. I mean, maybe he's doing fitness. I'm sure he's doing fitness. I lost train of thought, but I think that there's no way that you're going to look at him and say if he was healthy, he wouldn't be able to do what we need him to do. I think it's about saying we got an opportunity to get some money here. The low sell on, I think they took the money in the transfer. They think that maybe he's hit his ceiling and maybe he's just an MLS guy. He's a John Lewis guy. He's not going to go anywhere. That's why you figure, well, we'll take the risk. We'll take the reward now. And they might be right. He may be chronically injured. I have no idea.
Yeah. I think there is something to the injury thing. I also think there is something to the fit, not necessarily how he fits as a style of play, but kind of where he fits on this field. We've seen this team go to a 4-2-3-1. That is where they are doing. That system is going to require a number 10, which
let's talk about that in a minute.
We'll see what they have when we talk about the midfielders. You also need 2 wingers. You have Jared Stroud. That's good. You brought in João Peglo. That's good. I think we saw with Ted. I think he could be a number 10. I think he's got some creative abilities and some ability to set up shots. Do I think he can be an elite number 10? Probably not. But I think he would have some potential chops at that. I think there was a notion that I'm not sure with the players they brought in. Obviously, he's not replacing Jared Stroud. You spent all this money to bring in João Peglo. You've got Pirani. Obviously, you might be then targeting that number 10 spot in the summer for like an elite number 10 type player. So then where exactly does he fit? And I think that might have been the thought process is we got this money now. He's in competition. If he was on the roster, he's in competition. Maybe they honestly look too at Peglo and they're like, Peglo's playing great. This guy is coming in. He's playing well. He's a starter now. Pirani looks good. And we've also, Pirani looks good as well. We've also got Randall Leal there. Maybe this is an opportunity for some surplus requirements. And, yes, we would love to have him as a skill set on the bench. I think there is some argument to the fit just in sort of how you're going to line up. If you're playing like a 4-4-2 and doing a press, then yeah, he's the off-ball midfielder and he probably fits that role pretty well. Sort of the forward off of Benteke. So I think there is some argument maybe to the fit. RGNDC, have we heard any additional rumors about where DC might be doing to fill the vacancy created by Ted Pietro or the Colorado Rapids? Rita Zohir, baby. Rita Zohir is going to be your this. And you kind of talked about this too with the who fills the clip size gap in DC's production. I think it's going to be. I think that the hope is that it's sort of that is by committee and that it's a combination of Randall Leal. It's a combination of Gabriel Pirani, combination of João Peglo, Jared Stroud, obviously continuing what he's doing. So, yeah.
And
anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, David Schnegg and Aaron Herrera are kind of integral to what the assist picture looks like, how it's going to change. Again, I love giving him so much attention. I talk about him all the time. There's a certain listener / former podcaster that noted that so many of Click's assists were technically hockey assists, second assists. They were not primary assists. So it's not like all the many assists that are on his stat line were all, crazy, insightful through balls that no one else could make. So I don't know. I think it's going to require there's a lot of chips on a couple players whom are either new or have certainly not proved it yet. And that is what Mackay is staking his present on. And so is Troy. Yeah. And we'll talk about that very, very briefly in a second.
And we have some eagle-eyed people on DC United's Reddit have apparently posted Gavin Turner, who, if you don't know, DC United Academy player, played, I think, at the MLS Next All-Star game, played for Loudoun United for a lot, suffered a major injury, sort of getting himself back into fitness. Played for Loudoun United as well, and made some appearances there.
Committed to UVA also.
Committed to UVA, but is looking at options for a contract. Is now back with the team in Florida. I don't know if you want to put your chips into that, but maybe there was also a look of like, maybe they got some word that, yeah, he's training out in Crystal Palace. Like they think he's good, but no one's really, the offers aren't coming or the offers are very much tenuous. And then they're like, they make this sale for Teku DiPietro that suddenly opens up a potential roster spot where they're like, look, like, you're going to get an opportunity out there here at DC, like to start for the first team. We've just traded away Teku DiPietro. I don't know, something to watch.
A positively Lucho-sized player at 5'6", 141 pounds too. That's a
man. But I mean, getting minutes of championship is certainly not nothing. And being a player that can do that. All right. Nope. I think we got some other questions. We'll save those for when we get to the roster review we're doing. Other news: MLS is laying off. Sort of other around the news: MLS laying off 5% of their staff, and increasing in-office workdays.
I'd recommend everybody keep their resume polished right now. I'm getting some very, very econometric bad vibes lately with companies that don't need to make layoffs that are making layoffs, and companies that need to make layoffs and making bigger layoffs. So just things don't feel great. Hopefully everybody is secure in wherever they're working, and if not, stay sharp out there, folks. That's all I'm saying. More negative clouds. I want to talk about how great our midfield is and how I think Gabriel Prane is going to have 15 assists and also pay for a LinkedIn premium.
Yes. Sorry, I feel like we got some other stuff in the chat.
More questions?
We got plenty more questions. Let's get it. I think some of these are going to talk about. So we're going to talk about DC United's midfield, sort of give an overview of where things stand. So midfielders out, obviously Russell Canouse, Teku DiPietro, Matthias Click, Martin Rodriguez, Jeremy Garea, Christian Dahome. Christian Fletcher, I also have here with a question mark. I feel like there is some assumption that he's going to be sold for Nottingham Forest. He's starting to get minutes. I started to question. I was like, maybe he'll be back. Maybe things aren't going so hot there at Nottingham Forest, but he is starting to get minutes for the youth team. It seems like that one is trending towards happening. So he's on my out list. He certainly won't be here right now. It looks like for the beginning of the season. I feel like if there was any sort of trepidation of whether he would be sold, he would have said, they would have said, cancel the deal. Any sort of trepidation that he would not have been sold. They would have said, cancel the deal, get him to Florida, get him to preseason. Let's see if he can make a difference in DC United's roster. So that remains to be seen. Of the players out, obviously Teku DiPietro, Russell Canouse, sort of a big figure. The Matthias Click trade we've talked about a lot. I think that will always be the move that was sort of made. I think that's
the eyebrow raiser.
Yeah, that's the eyebrow raiser. If you're not aware, if you're still new to the show, you weren't around in December, DC United traded Matthias Click. They are holding on to his DP slot. It's a deadbeat DP slot for some salary relief. Rumors are around 300,000. Plus some GAM that will probably never come to fruition, and there was a draft pick in there too. So
I like the idea that there's listeners that like went into hibernation over the offseason, and now they just flip the switch back on. They're like, well, let me just see what's going on here. I'll put on my Matthias Click jersey and listen to the show, and then they're like, crap, what? It's entirely possible that could be you. Also on the departure list, Christian Dahome. I was looking through to see if any of these players have found new clubs. Christian Dahome plays for Santos Laguna, has played 4 matches and has gotten no goals or assists or yellow cards yet. I don't know if they have him at right back. That may be the problem. They might have him as a wing back.
Jeremy Garea, at the time one of the longest serving tenured players on the club, who was going to have the dubious honor of being like one of the longest tenured players of the club with 0 additions. Not sure where he's off to right now, at least not well known. Russell Canouse, obviously a long standout as a midfielder, suffering ulcerative colitis, if I try to pronounce that.
You got it right.
And so that's it. Martin Rodriguez again, another player I think who might be in. I think he's in Chile right now. I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Is that
Anyway.
did you see that on his stories, or did you see that like
I thought I saw that somewhere on Twitter, but I'm pretty sure he is signed. He is signed with a.
He is signed with nobody at the moment, according to Transfer
no, he
Market.
signed with Nubelense.
Okay, so not Colo Colo, not the team that he had been like thirsting for the whole time he was at DC United.
Of the players out, I mean, obviously there's some. We talked about Ted Pietro, we talked about Christian Fletcher, we talked about Mateus Click, Martin Rodriguez, Jeremy Gray, Christian Dahome. I know there's some people out there that still maybe think fondly of Martin Rodriguez, but I think both those players, Martin Rodriguez, Christian Dahome, sort of represent everything that was kind of, for me at least, everything that was kind of wrong with DC United in the era post 2019. Just felt like a team that was just flailing. It was like, we need to make this move. We need width. Let's just go overpay for this player. Let's go overpay for this player. I don't want to say I'm glad they're gone. They gave some contributions, but I think it's good that the team, at the very least, is not making those types of moves. This, regardless of what you think about right now, even the Ted Pietro trade feels deliberate. Like, this feels like a deliberate action. This is not a panic move. This is a, we think we can do this, and so we're going to sell this player. It's not like we got a $7 million offer for Kevin Paredes. We have to take that. Now we got to scramble the last couple weeks of the season to go out and fill that spot. And they did it poorly that last time.
If you like Martin Rodriguez, you should be very excited about Joao Peglo. It's a 7-year younger version of same cost from a similarly non-dominant league, lower cost, younger player, maybe higher top end. So don't lose sleep over either of those players.
Martin Rodriguez, I think, might have been a free transfer, but he was a TAM level player. That guy was on like a $900,000 contract. Like,
I believe we paid a transfer fee to a second division or third division Turkish side to bring him over here. I'm 50% sure.
But then paid him $1 million. At least with Peglo, I think it's a little bit lower. So getting a player younger, I think is a good thing. Players in, obviously we talked about Joao Peglo, Brenda Leal, Jose Kajima, Hakeem Karamoko, Brendan Sarvinia, and Rita Zohir are the two players that are trialists that are appeared to be offering contracts. I think we've talked, with a lot of these players, I think Kajima is maybe the only one we've maybe been able to see on a professional roster. He was a highly touted player for St. Louis, got some starts, seems to play. I think he's sort of envisioned as kind of in that sort of central midfield, whether it's I don't think it would be the 10, but maybe as sort of that 8 hybrid player. I think with the double pivot they're playing, both Matty Patola and Borisi now are envisioned to be kind of play like Matty with the 6, Borisi now maybe having fewer defensive responsibilities. We know he does like to push forward, kind of be maybe a little bit more deep lying as far as a playmaker. We've seen him take a shot, even though he's listed as a defensive midfielder.
And I've seen him get red cards. Also, we've seen him do a couple things. We've seen him miss games, and we've seen him shoot from really far out. And hit the post, right?
Yeah, he shot, and he had a banger too. I think in the African Cup of Nations, playing for his, or maybe it was a friendly, playing for his side. So, I think you're seeing with Kajima, I think they're thinking will fit kind of into that sort of 8 type role. And then I think also Brendan Sarvinia, based on watching highlights for him, I think he also is right now the backup. I think they're also envisioning like Jackson Hopkins to kind of play that role. He's the other player that's here. And then of course you have Jared Stroud and Gabriel Pirani. So the midfield, I don't know, like talent for talent. Do you think this midfield is better than last season? Has there been improvement in your mind?
No. I don't see improvement. I do not see improvement. I see, no, I do not. I'm not even, I'm not going to try to shape it, out as, you've got 2 players as far as your ins. You've got 2 players that were available to anybody who wanted them, who no one did until we called. You've got Karamoko, who was a draftee and who was injured for most of the season already, and wasn't really. I don't know. I don't really know yet where he was going to slot out. I was understanding he was a winger, but maybe not. Maybe that's not the case. Joe Peglo, to me, feels like he feels like what Martin Rodriguez was supposed to be when he got here, before Martin turned into like a very interesting non-running player. Jose Kojima, I'm excited about. Of the players that we've mentioned, I'm the most excited about him because he's young, he's healthy. St. Louis did not want to lose him. He had a number of minutes for St. Louis, and the coach has talked really highly of his skill set. Randall Leal, I'd love to get excited about, but typically players that come to you through the means that he's coming through, and having had that injury history, I'm not going to depend on him at all. I'm going to depend on him 0%. And anything he gives us at his salary and his recent level of performance is going to be an improvement. Knaus, just like quickly running through Knaus, he's nowhere either. That I think that maybe when he did play, we're like, oh, I remember why he was on the team and the good things he brought, but I don't think he was a game changer for us at this point. Ted was injured a lot when he was healthy and in the right position, and when he had the right players around him, he was really, really good. Fletcher, I don't think he's coming back. Click, I think I rate higher than a lot of DC United fans who are happy to see him go or can really understand it. I think that he has, of those players, so at least as far as we know, having seen these players not at all for DC United in preseason, none of those players do what Click did as far as inhabit that position. And the idea was that you're clearing space to allow for more minutes for Jackson Hopkins, who's injured, and for Boris Enow, who did not look good last year, in my opinion. So maybe that's the case. We really need to talk about Pirani. Pirani is, to me, the most important conversation, and the one that is the hardest to predict for 2025, and the thing that is most key to this team's results in the present, and also sort of what the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's Gabriel Pirani. It feels like a lot of this early season will lend to how he plays. We saw last year. It's really funny to look at DC United stats because you see, obviously, Christian Benteke, Golden Boot winner, 22 goals. The fulcrum of the offense. They're very clearly going to focus a lot on him this year. And, people are saying make some kind of one note. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that one note worked pretty well throughout the whole season. Like, really wasn't they still found ways to get the ball to him and get him into scoring positions because he's just so dominant in the air. And so, I mean, maybe it is kind of a good one note to have when no one else has been able to figure out how to really defend him. But this does feel like, Gabriel Pirani is going to occupy that 10 slot. He's going to occupy behind Benteke. He is going to try to play that role. He did improve his chance creation. It went from like bottom percentile to like 20%.
Hey,
so he needs to get higher.
So in 5 more years, he'll be the best in the league.
I would put him around 28. So maybe so. But I think there's a lot to say about how I think he did go from a player last year. I think if he does not have the performances off the bench that he had last year, there's a very good chance this guy is not on this roster, or would have been dumped for peanuts, in the winter window. I think they showed that, hey, maybe this guy is able to put it together off the bench. He's able to find the ability to score goals. Maybe an off season, a more structure around him, he'll be better. I think a lot of it's gonna be fun to watch if there's like marked improvement from him in 20, and maybe we'll all look like fools. As far as to whether I think this roster, whether I think the midfield is stronger, I think it's about the same. I think it's maybe slightly worse if some players don't hit. To me, Leao and Click is Leao is the question is he healthy? I think if he's fully healthy, he's several years younger, he can be a difference maker. I think Kojima looks like, from all we've seen, a very good player. Peglo seems like they've been impressed with him so far.
And he's scoring all these goals in these games we're not seeing. So
yeah, So I am choosing to be optimistic. I think there's a higher ceiling. Like the team that you had, the midfield you had last year, every single player, maybe with the exception of like Ted Pietro and Christian Fletcher, no one else everyone on that team was about as good as they're going to be.
Yeah.
Here, we could find Kojima could make a huge step up. We could find Peglo could make a huge step up. We could have both Petzela and Borisino have room to grow. Jackson Hopkins could come back from health and make a step up. Ronnie can also has room to grow. And I think we saw some flashes of that last year where we didn't see it at the tail end of 2023. So I think that's the real message I'm having for this team, is that there's some unknowns as to how high the ceiling is. If everybody stays the same, then obviously it's not great. I don't know how much worse the team actually is if everybody kind of holds steady. So
B Huzzle on Blue Sky says, what's behind their dogmatic belief in Pirani, especially since selling KDP? Seems like they're counting on Pirani producing big time in a role he has never demonstrated an ability to be even mediocre at, except small sample size. Speaking of my heart, I am also a hater, as everyone knows. Anyone who listens to this show knows. I have a Pirani jersey upstairs because he had that one little period of not being hateable. And I'll just say this. If you go to FBref and look at the similar players, it's hilarious. Number 1, Brendan Aronson. Number 2, Liel Abada, the player, the Maccabi Tel Aviv player who went to Charlotte last year. Daniel Gazdag, Hani Mukhtar, number 9. So the stats do not tell the story on this player. FBref has been broken, I think, is what happened. I think he's broken this website's ability to explain talent. Listen, what is with it? I don't know. I feel like this Makai, this was his first decision with the club, was exercising Pirani's option. First thing he did. And he made a big deal about this wasn't Dave Casper. Dave Casper didn't even know. I did this on my own. I am the boss. I'm the boss man. So there's a little bit of like, as a young, and not even as young, anybody, like if you make a public decision, sometimes you're going to really dig your heels in as long as possible to make sure that you are not wrong and give it every chance to not be wrong. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe they're saying like, listen, if you look at the way this roster is constructed and the giant hole we've put ourselves in, the only way we do well is if he does well. So we need to just clear the field. Don't put anybody in front of him. Make it so that Troy has to play him every single minute he's healthy. Sign another player that speaks Portuguese. Get him married. Give him a better apartment. Whatever it takes to make this man happy in this location that he's going to be in to do well. Make it happen. So make me look smart. Make us look good on the field. I do not know. I think he is a super sub. I don't think he can bear the weight carrying a team for 90 minutes week in, week out in MLS. I don't think he's got that in his bag. I hope that I'm wrong. The stats are a confusing mess and don't really tell the story from my perspective. But the team's all in.
Yeah. Get
on board or get out of the way is kind of the situation.
It also, I find it, is this the like the Moneyball scene where they trade like Pena, the first baseman, to play Hatterberg at first, and it's like, how hard
is it to be a number 10 MLS? It's not hard. It's extremely hard.
That's what it feels like. It feels like Makai walked into the room and it's like, okay, you're gonna have to play Pirani as the number 10. He's like, well, I already talked about this. Once March rolls around, Teku Pietro is going to play there. It's like, nope, you can't.
He's been traded.
I just sold him. I just traded him to Colorado. So, all right. I think any other notice of this midfield that sticks out. Obviously, we'll watch. I think if this team does sign Gavin Turner, let's assume that happens. Let's assume there is a path now where it's like, England really maybe wasn't too interested. There's suddenly an opening for him here where maybe he can get some minutes, and DC's like, here's a contract offer. And he's like, you know what? I'll take it. Like, I believe in myself. I want to, live my dream. Does that maybe quell this thing a little bit, that now there's another player that maybe we can get excited about? Also, they invited, I think, Nelson Hernandez, one of the other academy kids, who I think so he's down there as well. I wonder if there is and this is something I think that Goss is sort of in, and David Goss watches a lot more youth soccer than I do. He has said that, the team, the academy is doing better. Like they're bringing in players, and there are players that are better than Tecuti Pietro in the academy right now, and in that talent area. So they can sort of lock them down and sign them, and so maybe there is a notion that they've kind of opened up some room, and they're like, look, you've got some opportunities. You're going to get chances. We're not putting it really anything in front of you at this point. So we'll see. It's still some chances, still some moments in the window. And, I think we've seen some cases about how like, oh, we're kind of set. And then it's like, nope, we're going to make this big sale. So maybe there is something coming down the pipeline. All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk Washington Spirit.
This will be different and shorter because there are not a lot of those to have occurred. There is a few, but there are not very many.
Yeah, midfielders. You have no midfielders out.
None.
We should talk about probably the two. One potential signing that's coming in from, or the one loan that's coming in, and the player.
She's a defender,
center defender too. So yeah,
we have
Kasha Sila, I think is how you say it, on loan from Olympic Lyon.
Helps to own the team that you're getting players from.
Yes.
There was always a question of whether or not this was going to be like a fruitful relationship between the Spirit and Lyon. And Michelle Kay made a big deal about the fact that none of these teams would be primary. So this is the first move we've had. I'm curious to see if there will be more.
Yeah, and I think there has been a rumor of another player, and I am trying to find it, and this is terrible. It's a player from Monterey. That's apparently
another defender.
Yeah, another center defender. So that answers the question. They have basically, if this player comes through, they have basically locked down their defensive. We talked about this team only having 2 center defenders. Now they have 4. It's done. And they took care of it very, very quickly. And they've appeared to be making that up because there's a lot of question about the international slot situation. They've loaned Deborah, Abadoon and Tamara Boat to Dallas Trinity, which frees up sort of those international roster slots.
Although Bolt's contract is hilarious because she's only under contract for this year, and the next 2 years are options. So it's funny that the 1 year that she's actually under contract is going to be for a different team. So I think that's funny. I mean, I'm curious what happened there. I'm curious like how much of that was foresight and how much that was like, oh crap, we did not count the number of international spots right, and the cost to acquire them is too high. Shoot, okay, I guess we'll do this instead. Maybe we realized our center backs that we had on the roster were not sufficient, although it was just numbers. They just weren't enough. So I think they had to know that. And maybe it might be more about like how far along are some of these players? How far from returning are some of these season-ending injury players? Might be further than we think.
I mean, I think the big one has to be, by the way, the center defender is, and this is El Norte, is that Bernal. So Rebecca Bernal from plays for Rayados in Mexico, apparently on her way to sign with the Washington Spirit. I think it's a question too of the attacking situation with I think even with these trades, like that still is a question, right? Is Sarr healthy enough to get started, or do they then need to have to make another move to sort of free up some of those roster space? So
players returning next year, Croy Bethune, who is still recovering from her knee injury. She's still training on the side. I think she's somewhat close. Lacey Santos, who will be in her first full season with the Spirit. I'm very excited to see what that looks like, having a full off season and a preseason to be sort of really tied in with the rest of the team. Andy Sullivan still recovering from her injury. I think the reason that they brought in Narumi Miura is because Andy is still a couple months away, and then she's got to get into the swing of things. I think I'd look for her in the summer, late in the summer probably. Courtney Brown, a player who was a revelation, and at the end of the season ended up starting in the playoff games, filling in for all the injuries and suspensions and all the things that happened towards the end of the year. So I think great to have her along here again. I'm curious what she envisions her role being as you look at this midfield and figuring out what they're going to play from a formation perspective. Hal Hirschfeld, a player no one expected to have the year she had. She didn't expect it. I mean, you can listen to the interviews we did with her. Like, she was somewhat thrown by all the things that happened. But she's here. How will she do in her sophomore season? How will she do knowing that she's going to end up playing a lot more minutes than maybe she thought last year she'd be coming into play, and having had the international experience both as a training player in the Olympics and also in camps that she's played in. I think she's a question mark. Not is she good, but like just how does she continue to evolve in the league now that she's going to be identified, and also still know Andy. She's got to develop a relationship with Mira and see what that looks like. That was the big differential. If you watched Howl the season, it's the first half of the season before the Olympics where she and Andy are developing this extremely competent relationship where they cover for each other, they complement each other. It makes Howl look better, I think, than anything else. And then Hal goes to the Olympics. Andy gets hurt later in the year, and Hal is figuring out her way back into the team and isn't really playing in the same way she was earlier. That'll be an open question. How much can she impact the game without Andy Sullivan next to her for the full first half of the year, probably?
If you ever played Football Manager, it's like there's the green little line between the players that shows they're like have good chemistry. That's what they had there.
She had a red next to everybody for a little bit of while, I think, is when she came back from Paris.
And extremely sad that we will not be getting Football Manager so I can do my scouting, because the women's leagues were going to be coming into that got canceled. So very sad. That was the sad news I got over the weekend. I don't know. John's like, I don't care.
No, I do. I mean, listen, I know there are lots of people that are very upset about it.
Yes.
Heather Stainbrook, another player similar to Courtney Brown, who came out of nowhere from the Spirits perspective. If you've heard her interview on Hey Spirits, she was sort of she did not get drafted, but the Spirit were like, "You're on the team. Just come try out, and you're on the team, and we believe in you." She didn't get any minutes for quite some time, and then when she came on, I believe she scored a goal. She looked the part. So again, curious. It's always good when your depth players get tested and they do well. And now that just means you have better depth. It means you have players that are you feel less concerned when you see their name in the team sheet, because they've been there before and they can do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the notion. I mean, this is a team that I think we all kind of thought the wheels are going to fall off. When Corbett Thune goes down, Andy Sullivan goes down, it was like, we might sneak into that second spot because we had such a great start to the year. And then there were players like Courtney Brown, like Stainbrook, that stepped up, and they weren't 100% like great. They filled the role, and I think that's what you got out of them. So
you've got, as I mentioned before, Narumi Miura, a player from North Carolina Courage, who just got called up to the Japanese national team. Sees a like for like swap for Andy as far as the 6 role on the team. They needed to do something there. I think that I'm not super familiar with her game, but all of the scouting reports and sort of people who know ball a lot better than I do in NWSL are really happy with this move, and think she was in demand for that position. And then the 2 new players, Emma Gaines Ramos, and I already mentioned Abadoon. Gaines Ramos is on SEI. Don't expect anything from her for quite some time, and then Abadoon is on loan. So the midfield is, I would say, probably pretty set. I could see one more player getting in here. So you've got Bethune and Santos playing sort of similar positions. Didn't get to play too much together. It was very interesting to watch Bethune get moved out of her spot to accommodate Santos. Bethune got moved to the wing for like 2 games before she hurt herself, and it was not the same. So very curious to see how they sort that out early in the season, getting them both in the field, letting them both impact the game, because they both want to be in the ball. So TBD how that's going to work out.
Yeah. And then, I think as well, looking at, I think Courtney Brown kind of filled that sort of number 8 role very well, sort of getting into the attack. And I think I could see one more addition. It feels pretty well set. It feels like the defense, now we talked about that being a concern, that feels pretty well set as well. I think there's no doubt that this team has, I think what's interesting to me about the midfield is that they didn't really there wasn't anyone major that they lost. They've sort of brought everybody kind of back, and that is in my opinion a very good thing for a team that is trying to have consistency. The players they let go on the defensive side and even go are not players that you're going to say, oh, that's a big loss. Like, how are they going to fill that role? They're all players who were depth, didn't really fit well with whatever the new system was they were trying to do. Now this really feels like a year where you have a coach in here. You've built this thing around them. Now it's time to take off. I think this team should be early favorites for the top of the NWSL stand. Almost said Eastern Conference, and I'm like, there are no conferences.
Not yet.
Not yet.
One day. You've got 6 healthy players for 3 spots. They're going to likely play 4-3-3 again.
Mm-hmm.
So Bethune is still not healthy yet. So maybe you'd say you have 5 players for 3 spots at the early onset of the season. But I could see a domestic player coming in for the first 3-4 months, depending on sort of what the salary cap situation looks like. We'll talk about the forwards. The forwards are the more exciting, probably from a well, not from additions perspective, but from a talent perspective. For 2025.
Yeah, worth watching there. All right. I don't think there's any other real news to discuss. I guess thank you guys so much for listening, for joining the live chat, for watching us on your living room TV for some reason.
Love that. Thank you.
I did not really prepare for people to be watching us on a living room TV. So if I look awful, I'm sorry.
We'll turn the 4K on for you guys next time, so you get get all of our pores.
No one needs to see that. All right, thank you guys so much for listening. Again, we got the sort of forwards and then sort of the overall preview to start the year. By this time next week, we'll be previewing the start of the regular season. So thank you guys so much for watching and listening on the podcast. If you're listening on the podcast app, we'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.
They've been watching us since